Did you know in the state of California, English language learning students make up 29% of the public school system in the state of California? An English language learner is a student who is in school in the United States but whose native language isn't English. These students are faced with the daunting task of learning the language they are being taught in, alongside of an expectation to keep up with what the rest of their grade level is learning, as these students are assessed with the same standards as their English-speaking peers. The education system within the state of California has been ranked one of the lowest in our country according to the UCLA Institute for Democracy, Education, and Access. They credit the following as the cause for this low rank: lack of learning materials, teacher quality, overcrowding, facilities, funding, and unequal treatment of English learners. Regionally, the education issues are not so different, funding for higher education and after-school programs being some of the highlights. Throughout the state of California, there are several organizations that focus on advocacy and taking action within education roles. Ed Voice is an organization based out of Sacramento, California that is fighting educational inequality and the gap in student achievement. What if I partnered with these organizations to take a stand and advocate for these students? The Advocacy Sourcebook defines advocacy as a word that has its origins in law and is defined by most dictionaries as the process of speaking on behalf of someone. However, it has evolved to include work undertaken by development agencies, civil society groups, and individuals to bring about change. The process of managing information and knowledge strategically to change and/or influence policies and practices that affect the lives of people, particularly the disadvantaged. Advocating on behalf of the voiceless. What if I were the voice for these students? What issue would make the biggest impact on the population if I addressed it? Due to improper teacher training, English language learning students are often misdiagnosed because their students have inadequate training to teach them effectively. This misdiagnosis results in the student being put into special education classes, increasing any feelings of separation or isolation that are already existent. This has detrimental effects on the student's social skills, emotional well-being, and educational progress. I am focusing in on increased teacher training and teaching English language learners in California public schools. I realize that this is one of the major issues that, if changed, would create the largest impact within the issue of unequal treatment of English language learners and affect the students holistically. With this in mind, I began to create a plan that would make an impact in this issue, creating awareness within a public sphere alongside of contacting the people who have the most influence within this issue are key to creating waves of change for English language learners. I began to gather information about the resources and training available to teachers of English language learning students in the state of California. Using West Ed as a major source in contacting legislators, including Senator Carol Liu, who is the chair of Los Angeles Education Committee. I began to gather stories with the hope of putting a personal face to the issue being addressed, and I began communications with several teachers to ask questions and gather testimonies of what they think would be most helpful and beneficial. I also started to research bills that have already been passed that address the unequal treatment of English language learners in California. My plan is to compile all this information and create a plan of action to present to California legislators on May 6th with ideas of what would be the best way to address the situation based on what's already out there and what is needed. The goal of this advocacy project would be to increase access for teachers to adequate and necessary training workshops, to offer appropriate English language learner assessment based on their actual skill level, not their English-speaking classmates, and possibly implement some biliteracy programs to help non-English speaking students increase their English speaking ability. I compiled a lot of information about teaching standards in California and standards for English language development. The standards for English language development state that, therefore, it is resolved that amendments to and the repeal of certain provisions in this chapter at the November 2016 statewide general election will advance the goal of voters to ensure that all children in California public schools shall receive the highest quality education, master the English language, and access high-quality, innovative, and research-based language programs that provide the California education for a global economy. There is an awareness that already exists within California to change the way that these students are being taught and assessed. It is my hope that the information I have gathered and will present creates an urgency to act on this knowledge. A bill passed in 2011 required the Board of Education to update and revise California state learning standards for English language learning students. The School Board of Education acknowledges that these students face rigorous school years, stating English learners face an additional challenge in developing literacy in English, since they must develop oral oral proficiency in English, including depth and breadth of vocabulary, at the same time that they are learning to read and write. The standards go on to indicate that English language learners' teaching excellence is dependent upon the teacher's ability to comprehend the student's stages of cognitive development, native language literacy, programs and services available for English learners, and long-term English learners. The Education Trust West presents 3 ways that California can increase access to great teachers statewide. They suggest to create incentives for teachers to enter the profession, work at high-poverty schools, and teach hard-to-staff subject areas, provide teachers with rigorous and ongoing evaluation, and require districts ensure equitable distribution of effective teachers and offer district leaders the flexibility they need to achieve this. This is the reality that English language learners face. People trying to take advantage of them as they attempt to succeed in a world where they barely know the language. My next steps are to incorporate all of this information into a presentation and submit it to California's Education Committee to see where it goes from there. I think the implementation of continued professional development will be the hardest thing to figure out, as I don't know what exactly that will look like beyond discussing the newest revisions to English language development standards for students. The most impactful part for me in planning my advocacy work is learning so much about the impact that advocates have had on the issues they fight for. There is a lot of power in being informed and fighting for something through your own knowledge and skills. This project and the research I did for it has created a greater awareness of the needs of non-English speaking students. My hope as an education studies major is to move forward in pursuing a career in teaching English language learning students. Thank you for your time.